Thank you. Welcome to our December 2024 edition of our Kentucky K-12 COs and EdTech Leaders webcast. I'm David Couch with Public Education. We use this on a monthly basis to bring up to date on some things that are going statewide and within districts and also nationwide, but also to get your feedback as well and to share it with your peers across the state. So thanks for joining us this morning, right before we celebrate the holidays coming up here. So first item that is up is a topic that will be talked about with superintendents. So this is kind of like you may want to, if you've not had that discussion with your superintendent yet and C-level staff in your district, you may want to do that before the January 14th webcast with them to educate them. Chuck, I know you've traveled the state at the different co-op meetings, but you may have 50% of the superintendents that participate those at any one time. So this is a way to circle around and try to get another percentage of them. And also just for the district to educate, their CEO of the organization, superintendent, other C-level folks like their chief finance officer and HR kind of folks as well. So Chuck, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, David. So just wanted to take some time and provide kind of an update on where we're at with the overall CUES initiative. So there's a lot of activity that's occurring within the various work streams, primarily around, as David just mentioned, a lot of ongoing communication, as well as a lot of effort still being applied behind the scenes with architecture. I'll get to some of that. Before I do, just a huge shout out to all the members of our district advisory group for their input, their thought leadership. Those folks have been phenomenal. And we meet on a weekly basis with that group. So, based on the feedback from that group, based on the feedback from those that have deployed this in advance, we've already went through, I'll call it, several iterations of what phase one is going to look like as we look toward implementation. And we're spending lots of time really trying to figure out how can we relieve the pressure and work on school districts as we implement this? How can we automate as much as possible? And just a great example of that, and I know this is a conversation, David, that's occurred around the regions in the last several weeks. As we've worked, as John and the architecture team have worked really hard to make the overall process easier and more streamlined, there's a conversation that keeps occurring around the concept of identity mapping. All right. So, I'll use myself as an example. If I were in a school district, I would be in Munis as Charles Austin. But in Active Directory, I'm Bassman. Thank you, John Logan, for that one for the last 2 decades. And in Office 365, I'm Chuck.Austin at education.ky.gov. Well, somebody's got to map those identities together, and I want the school districts to understand identity automation and the enablement team are going to handle that behind the scenes. That is not something school districts going to have to worry about. But that being said, obviously, we still continue to work against our timelines. But I do want to emphasize that our timeline dates are targets. They're not deadlines. Okay. We really prioritize accuracy over swiftness. And because of the complexity of this and the entanglement of this with so many other systems, it's just going to be really important for us to get this right. All right. So I do apologize for some of the delays that we've already experienced, one of which I hope to bring good news about today, which is we are looking to release our phase one data normalization guide by the end of the week. I had committed to Casey Woods at the winter change event a couple of weeks ago that we would deliver it by 12:15. Casey had the courage to send that out to his region, and Casey, I blew it. My bad. But this week we are on target to deliver. That document will be really the first starting point.
No worries, Chuck.
Thank you, Casey. So for all districts, that document will be the first starting point that has to occur from a data cleanup perspective before anything else can happen. And there's going to be 3 primary action items that are going to be in that document. Okay. David's talked about one of them already, and we've actually got a poll question that we're throwing out there today. But the formation of your C-level team, all right, the primary stakeholders within HR, your enrollment staff, and technology coming together to all play in the sandbox together is so critical. And I do want to give another shout out to Jason Rector at Adair County, because Jason demonstrated some superb leadership by literally posting on Adair County's website an entire section about CUES and what their leadership makeup is going to look like. And Jason, just so you'll know, we are pirating, plagiarizing the matrix that you published. And that's going to be in the normalization guide for folks to fill out so they can identify by name who those key players are going to be. So that's going to be action item number 1. Action item number 2 is to sit down with those folks and start identifying your processes with an emphasis on the timing of enrollment and hiring. As we brief superintendents, the one thing that superintendents all agree with, I have not had one superintendent push back on the concept of ensuring that as our students and new staff members enter our buildings to participate in the learning environment, that they have access to the technology resources they need day one. Well, that's a timing perspective when you start talking about onboarding. So that's obviously one of those things we want people to start studying, digging through to figure out. And then last but not least, something that I know everybody's waiting on is the entire concept of data stewardship and cleanup. All right. So we've spent a ton of time behind the scenes working directly with identity automation. But also, when I say we, I'm talking about our Infinite Campus staff, I'm talking about our Munis staff, looking at all of the attributes or data fields that we're going to use to pull from both Munis and Infinite Campus for provisioning. And not only provisioning just a basic identity, but when you get into the concept of rostering, which I know a lot of districts put a lot of importance on. But at the end of the day, let me tell you what we've discovered. And we feel really good about this. And I'm gonna coin a phrase from Nathan Seaton that based on what we are seeing, those that are getting paid and those that are getting grades are in pretty good shape, which is 99% of the population. So when you really think through that, if you're getting a paycheck, all right, and all that's associated with that, a lot of the basic attributes that we're going to pull to create an account, you're already doing well. And if students are getting grades, there's obviously a lot of information, all right, that districts are using and doing really well. So I think for a lot of districts, when you see this guide and you see a lot of attachments and links around one roster mapping to Infinite Campus, mapping to Munis data, mapping to data fields and screenshots, to some that may be overwhelming, we're hopeful that for most districts, the majority of districts, the subset of what we're looking to pull and that you need to ensure you are cleaning up and following the standards of is something you're already doing and doing well. There's a couple of additional ones we're going to be asking for, primarily for the adult population. Those will be covered in the guide, but we hope to release that this week. That is the target. Now, David, we're also going to be targeting a statewide webcast the week of January the 6th. We haven't yet to put that on the calendar, and it'll be an opportunity to go over this guide in detail. Because here's what we know. We're going to deliver that this week, and hopefully everybody's going to take some time off. Yes, you can read it over the holidays if that's what you feel like doing as you're spending time with your family. We would prefer you take a breather and prepare for 2025. But in doing so, we want to make sure that we can provide an avenue for any district to ask questions and for us to explain the contents of that guide the week of January the 6th. So we're going to follow that up. So item number 2 that I want to report on today is we're already starting now to unveil what we call the baseline manifest, which is the starting point configuration that every district will have. We're going to be formalizing kind of an overview of that. That is something that will be covered as you go through enablement with Joanne's team from Identity Automation. There's going to be a lot of options for a variety of the functions that you can pick from based on your culture, based on how you want to handle different age groups, grade levels, students and adults. But also there's going to be some new cybersecurity standards you're going to see us unveil and some preventative measures that we're going to be putting in place specifically around identity security. And we're talking about some of the modules that come with the offering from Identity Automation, Safe ID, Shield ID, along with, at this point, we've got over 100 districts that have signed up for Fish ID. And we're hearing a lot of tremendous testimonies where that's already paying dividends. So last point I'll make this morning, as David mentioned earlier, we've got ongoing superintendent communications. I meet with OVEC up in Region 4 tomorrow, and then I'm scheduled to be on Northern Kentucky. Their board, I'm going to brief them on January the 8th. And then obviously, as David mentioned earlier, the Commissioner Superintendent's webcast will be on January the 14th. David and I will be there presenting on cues just as a point of emphasis. of the support that our EdTech leaders need from the superintendents as they bring that C-level team together to start working together to accommodate what we hope will be a really exciting, all right, and efficient solution that solves a lot of problems we've got around K-12 today. So Marty, I know that we had a poll question. If somebody could bring that up real quick, we can kind of see what some of the responses are, and if we revisit that, we can. So the poll question is, have you assembled your C-level team? Have you taken the lead that Jason Rector demonstrated and at least starting to brief the key folks that are going to play a role in cues, all right, on what we're doing, why we're doing it, what the expected outcomes are, and start to identify some of those process gaps from an onboarding perspective. So I'm gonna play ignorant for a minute and figure out, okay, good deal. So it looks like we've got about 63 for 65% that have. Got several that haven't, and that's okay, but we've got a couple that got it on the calendar. Very good, very good, very good. And so I just encourage everyone to keep up that work. Go ahead.
As we heard from the Kisti Fall event, this is 90% of people issue project and 10% technology. And so it counts on the district, much like I'm doing with the C-level folks up here at the Department of Education. I'm regularly updating them on what cues is. No one's coming and doing that for me. And districts should not expect anyone's coming to meet with, from our staff or anyone else at KD is meeting with them to brief them on cues. That's going to be responsibility of the C-level folks within the district, either superintendent and or the CIO. In some districts, the CIO is the superintendent. Bringing those other folks in that need to be aware of it, because it does change some timing of things that need to be at the beginning of school year. And I would say this, everyone we've talked to is all for it until you actually start doing it. And that's what I've told our commissioner pretty regularly. It's supportive. It's got all these good things. Our concern is the people that have not been told by, the CFO and the other folks in the district or the superintendent that have not been educated on this by the CIO, because we're counting on, most like everything else we cover here, it is rare that we have a superintendent's webcast, and we're going to do one on cues and cybersecurity since they're so important. But we typically rely on, I call the chain of command, and count on the folks that we're communicating with within the district to educate the appropriate people within the organization. And when that's superintendent, and superintendent may really be the CIO, or they're getting with the CFO and other appropriate folks.
So, David, the one thing, and I had a great conversation. I've had a couple of great conversations with Stella Pollard, all right, who's just a tremendous EdTech leader we've got. And, as she's bringing her team together, I think what we really want people to do is lead that conversation with the outcomes, lead by outcomes. Okay. For example, I don't know that there's anybody in the room that would not agree that as new students are enrolled, as new staff members are hired, they need access to the technology resources to participate in the learning environment they want. Okay, well, for that to happen, then there's timing changes that have to happen. Okay, I don't think that anybody would disagree that teachers need the opportunity to keep students engaged in the classroom to the learning environment. Well, that's a great opportunity to start marketing the opportunity for teachers to reset student passwords, so teacher delegation. And then obviously, when you talk about identity security, preventative measures to keep people from being phished, to keep their identity safe. There's just things you have to put in place for all those goals to be achieved. So I'm a big proponent of leading with the outcomes to start the conversation. But anyway, that's kind of my update, David, for December on cues.
Hey, I do want to give folks an update on something called Read.ai and the protocol. So for our meetings, our team meetings, whenever we see Read.ai added, we are removing that from being able to join this meeting. And I can remember early on with Read.ai, that was almost like a virus that was attaching itself to folks, and they didn't even know they were bringing it to a meeting. So typically a protocol, if you don't have someone that's sitting there taking notes, is that the meeting host, you run that through the meeting host first. For us, we already use Teams AI to do the summary of the meetings. In fact, the summary notes that I sent you yesterday are done through Teams AI, and you have access to that. Marty, any other words? Just so you know, when we see Read.ai, those are immediately removed. And I'm not sure that you even know that those have been added. But I would say for any meeting that you join that you're not the host of, you probably need to get the thumbs up from the host before you add those. Because sometimes I've seen those things almost attach itself to all the meetings, the folks in that meeting, and take it off to other meetings. And we've had that happen. So the other,
Yeah, just a great reminder and coaching point for all of us, and with our folks that we're coaching along the way. Anytime we record a meeting, it's awesome to say, hey, just a reminder, we're recording this meeting, and that comes into play with leveraging generative artificial intelligence as well. As hey, just as a reminder, we're using artificial intelligence to capture this transcript and create some intelligent summaries from this, and so. Don't feel like you need to use your own tools. We're using a tool built in. Just a great reminder and coaching point for all of us as we continue down this path.
and it's something we do across the board for any kind of meeting that we have department. When we see those attached, whether it's be a superintendent's meeting or whatever, those are immediately removed. And it's always worth, as you know, we've been using these tools for a bit now since COVID, but it's always worth coaching and educating folks on what's the appropriate time and inappropriate time. But we saw Read.ai being added to meetings that really shouldn't have been added to meetings. It's a note taker and don't know where that's going. It's kind of an open environment where anybody can get to it. So ours is most of not everybody can get to the team stuff, the team's AI stuff. So there's a lot more security to it. So you will see that. So if you've accidentally brought it in, you'll see that we've taken it out. Or if you've intentionally brought it in, you'll see that we always immediately remove those. Next up is our Kentucky K-12 Data Systems Report, Dee Dee Connor.
Thanks, David. Do you care if I take a few minutes and just show what the school report card is going to look like?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, so let me share my screen. So we do have a school report card that is possibly going to go live later today. It is a soft launch, and there are good reasons for it being a soft launch and not a full public launch. It'll be available to the public, but we're really not telling anybody. We know there's some mobile issues. We know there's a few accessibility issues still existing, and we know there's some performance issues that aren't ideal right now, but it is a state federal requirement to have one. Our old school report card sunset yesterday, so we're without one right now. We want to get something up, and don't plan on doing a formal announcement, or may not do a formal announcement until January sometime. So this is what the new dashboard looks like. The data sets will be available here, not with the soft launch, but they will be available in January. But if you go into a school district or at the state level, you're going to have information basically the same, depending on the school level and so on. But you'll be able to get to the different overview levels, similar to what you've seen before, where you see overview, accountability, academic performance, career and technical education is its own domain now. It wasn't previously. Educational opportunity, school safety, and then transition to adult life. There's not any financial transparency data available at this point in time. That comes in the spring. We'll be trying to load the prior couple of years before spring. So this is basically what you're going to see. It's been a big undertaking. It's not just been 1 year. It's been 3 years of data bringing in. So we hope that we'll get some good feedback from you all. This is something that we feel like is a starting point. We'll continue to refine it throughout the 2025 as we go into a second release too. So that is just kind of just a quick view. I don't want to go through it, spend a lot of time on it, but I do want to give people kind of an advanced look of what it might look like, what it will look like. Some other updates on the data front, civil rights data collection, or known as CRDC, that is open now. It was opened last week, but the Office of Civil Rights asked us to stop loading data. They uncovered some issues. So we've started reloading the data this week. And there's still some of the skip logic that's not working as well as we'd like to see it work. So I'm not sure what the Office of Civil Rights will do at this point in time, if they'll ask us to delay again or leave it open. Right now, we've told districts that starting on December 23rd, they can start loading data, that we should have all of ours loaded. If that changes, we will let you know. I don't think anybody's going to be chomping at the bit on the day before Christmas Eve to start loading CRDC data, but it all has to be loaded by March 7th. So you do have some, through the late winter, early spring to be able to start working on that. The Generate system, we continue to be one of the state leaders for the Generate reporting. That is a new federal reporting process. Kentucky's kind of taken the lead and is piloting many of the processes associated with that. But that just gets data to the federal government and in a cleaner way than we've seen it in the past. And we are, doing new files each year. One more thing, just wanted to mention, we've been on a healthy data diet for a long, long time, but we've really been focusing on Social Security numbers recently. And we just had another part of that solution has been delivered, and that is where Infinite Campus is no longer syncing Social Security numbers that you have at the district level up to state edition. So we won't get those Social Security numbers. That's one more area of protection for students and staff that are in your systems. No sense syncing it at this level because we do not use the Social Security number. I do want to say thank you for all those of you that attended Infinite Campus's winter change. It was a great event. We had maxed out capacity at the Omni, and it was good to see so many of you as well as others, and a lot of good sessions there delivered. So David, we do have mid-year training scheduled right now for January 28th. We may have a conflict with that date, but if that changes, we'll let everybody know. But that's all my update today.
Okay. And I'll work a little bit backwards though. I sent a communication to the director of Kentucky Stats this past week and identified the items that we would like to see addressed within a year timeframe between our organizations. Kentucky Stats is one of the best longitudinal data systems in the United States, and it survived where most did not make it when we started these longitudinal data systems 15 or 20 years ago. So there's a lot to be proud about it, but at the same time, we need to advance as technology advances and times change. 30 years ago, we really didn't have unique student identifiers, a unique one across our state. We didn't have cyber criminals that are in constant attack of K-12. And so there needs to be a recognition of that. And one of the top targets is student Social Security numbers because they can go undetected for long periods of time. So part of that is an effort that we have in KD, the agency we have with districts, is the old stuff that you have, let's get rid of that. That's no longer needed. So, for example, when a student graduates from a K-12 school, there's no reason to keep on holding on to Social Security numbers. It just makes it, as I always will say, an attractive nuisance for a criminal. So if a criminal knows you have $2,000 in cash piled up on a window and you have your window open, or on a table and you have your window open, it just encourages them to try to break in. And so we want to move away from one of the most viable targets of cyber criminals being student Social Security numbers. So the communication, had a couple of different areas. One is to remove the old ones that they may have had, they still have for 15 or 20 years. The other part of it is taking a look at the unemployment insurance system, which is very aged and is causing problems for us, even just giving them the last four. What can be done to expedite that? And even on the new system, what can be done? And taking a close look at other states, Indiana has figured this out. They don't use student Social Security numbers. They have an equivalent of a longitudinal data system, and some other states have as well. And so I think that's an important one because if those ever got broken into, the question would be asked, why are you still using those? Why you still have those? So we're trying to get ahead of that. So this was kind of an action step over the next year with that particular organization to try to address it. It appears to be cooperative. They were aware of that. And it's been a good cooperative relationship with Kentucky Stats over the year, which I think has been a key to its success. Dee, on the graphs and charts portion of the school report card is the only part that I'm kind of interested in as we launch it is its ability to render quickly. And I can see the reports, but when X number of people use it, how long does it take to ever bring that up? And what's a fair amount of time for those graphs? I know it's grabbing from a bunch of data, but that's what we're looking at is we have, and that's why you're seeing this soft launch, because we're not sure it can handle this large magnitude all at the same time. We're now focusing on the data quality because we really, as we transfer from one vendor to another, it was tough to get eyes on this by all the appropriate people to make sure the data was accurate. So that's our first step. And the second is we don't want to advertise too much if it's inaccurate, but if it can't handle a load all at the same time. So that's why you're seeing this soft load. So I'll be interested as it's going down as we partner with ANLAR, is their ability, because when you go to a cloud-based system, as you know, it's not like you had to buy all the hardware in the past. You can rent an X amount for certain times, beat that up when you expect peak times, and then bring it back down. That's a nice part of moving to a cloud-based solution.
And I don't think, David, it's going to meet all of our expectations with this initial soft launch, and maybe even not with the January launch. Our RFP required a 3-second response time. So I think they say they'll get there. But it might not be initially.
Good to know. Okay, thank you, Dee. Mike Lettingham and Amy Young giving us an update on our Kentucky Education Technology System finances.
So I'll speak to a few of these things, then Amy can jump in and circle back to a few of these. I've got quite a few things bundled up here in this grouping here. The annual budget request, I'll circle back to that one. Let Amy kind of she's submitting that on our office's behalf, so I'll let her speak to that one. The offers, I think everybody's aware, $21 per ADA this year. First offers just went out. We had a few districts that were not ready for when we done the first offer, so we have circled back to those and issued that first offers. A second round, I guess I'll call it, of the first offers, and so we're following up with those. So those are all in process. Second offers, so the first offers was $12. Second offers will be $9, which will occur sometime in the March timeframe. So really no outstanding concern or issues with any of that. Obviously, if you as an individual district have a concern, be sure to bring that to attention of your CATS engineer or directly to my office, and we'll make sure we clarify and get that straightened up. On the E-rate area, everybody should be getting prepared to do their applications in the January. That window typically opens in the January timeframe. We don't have a date yet for when that will open, so we will certainly advise folks when that window opens and will be available. We've had multiple training sessions covering a variety of topics. We've been working on collecting the discount data. So I think we had a date yet for that to be turned in. So there's still a little bit of time for folks to respond to that. I'm trying to look and remember exactly what the date is, but what is it?
January 10th, Mike.
There you
is
go.
when
Okay.
the discount.
So
January 10th.
Yep, January 10th. So related to E-rate, I'll mention the cybersecurity pilot that is somewhat related to the E-rate programs that comes out of the State Universal Service Fund program. The numbers that we have been given access to is that there was about $3.7 billion worth of applications filed for that. And keep in mind the amount of money that was made available for that pilot was $200 million. So a significant amount of applications beyond what is going to be able to be funded as part of that pilot. I think, and I don't know that we've got an exact number on this, but we had about 7 in Kentucky that filed an application. So we'll be interested if you hear anything on that. We know that there's been rumors of that they may nix the pilot, and I can't speak to the details of that. It's certainly not an official, certainly nothing official. We haven't heard anything official on that, but we are aware that there are folks saying that they feel like they may nix that pilot, and I don't know what. I can't even speak to what would be the alternative. What's the thought process there, or whatnot. But if we would learn anything along the lines of that officially, or even close to officially, we'll certainly share that. But we're going to continue to keep an eye on that, and we're hopeful that that cybersecurity pilot does go forward, because there certainly is some things that can be learned. There's certainly a need that we can benefit from in some kind of a funding program, whether it's directly through the E-rate program or related to the E-rate program. But again, a lot of things potentially could shift and change around that kind of funding, E-rate and other federal funding. We all, know we're going to be keeping an eye on all of that. So that's just one of many that we'll be keeping an eye on. The technology activity report information, we spoke about this somewhat in the last district webcast. Whenever we were given an overview of digital readiness information, we had some information on the numbers from the technology activity report. So we'll continue to look at those and incorporate that into, our infographic and other information that we used. At a high level, the number that we want to make sure everybody's thinking about and what we're seeing and what we expected is that the overall spend decreased by about $56 million. Two major categories of that spend decreasing. One was on internet, school district internet access decreased 14%, and classroom digital learning decreased by 29.2%. So again, something we're keeping an eye on, and we will be continuing to talk about that in other venues and other meetings as far as the takeaways from that and what that's telling us, and certainly as we go forward, we're expecting to see as the money becomes less available, obviously the spending's going to continue to go down some. Amy, circling back to the annual budget request, do you want to speak to that real quick?
Sure. Thanks, Mike. Morning, everyone. So at this time of year, KDE is preparing to enter into the prep work that we do for the biennial budget process, and that would be for 26-28. So there are several different kind of activities associated with that, leading up to ultimately the submission to the governor's office for then him to put together his budget and issue that to the legislature, who then works on their form of the budget. So in working through that process, obviously, we've talked before in these different webcasts about the KETS ABR that we are seeking, and we will seek again for the 26-28 biennial budget process. And that will entail, again, raising those KETS funds, the baseline, from 15.4 million up to 30 million. Those are due initially internally here in January, and then that will be presented to the board for the first time for this biennial session coming up in February. So OET will be part of that board meeting to kind of again reiterate our critical need for rebaselining and raising those KETS funds back up to 30 million. We've had this basically as a board priority over the last few biennial sessions and work, and ultimately they gained some traction with the governor's version of the budget. Ultimately, we did not get that approval and that bump up. But again, just taking a minute to advise you kind of on the time frame of the next step for that request is coming up in February with our board. Again, advocating for that to be a KBE board priority going into this session. And then obviously we will be working with the legislature to detail out, our KITS services and the EdTech services and products that that funding is able to provide for all K through 12 districts. Again, we can't stress enough your role in educating your leadership and your representatives on the need for that. We can't stress that enough, because basically they want to hear from you and what you identify as priorities, as well as we'll do that from our side of the house as well, from KDE. So the breakdown on that 30 million, obviously we've went through since 1992, we've had cost of living expenses that we've had to basically just absorb in the program. So obviously, if all of us or any of us lived on an income from 1992 in today's economy, that would be devastating. And obviously that's not sustainable in the CATS program as well. And then we've also, during that time frame, over the last 14 years of that, experienced significant cuts of $10 million. So, that compounded with the cost of living increases and obviously the exponential growth of services, and as well as the numbers and types of equipment and services that we provide. Ultimately, this is the time where we really have to push to get that funding reestablished and restored. And as David has brought up during several different webcasts and educated our board as well as our legislature on that funding cliff that we are seeing and we are actually experiencing at this point with our TAR numbers dropping off, and the spend dropping off this $56.6 million this year. That's just indicative of those kind of time limited federal funding with the COVID relief funding maturing and making it to its expiration date. So that impact is basically the effect is occurring now. So we have to do something to address this or, see our services and quality of services start to decline as we're not able to kind of sustain and maintain what we have in place for the KET system. So with that said, I'll kind of let David or Mike add any points that I didn't cover.
Thanks, Amy. I have to say this is, and really all the commissioners have been very helpful, but I've spent a lot of time with Commissioner Fletcher, and he definitely has this one of his top priorities because I hear about him speaking at meetings that I'm not at, that we've reached a point of needing this addressed or certain services will stop. As you said, not getting a cost of living increase since 1992 is sustaining cuts just like other offices did. But there was always a promise that would be restored, and that's not happened yet. We've had great success by our board, and I expect that to keep on happening. What happens in the session, it seems like at the last second we get stepped over for something else. That's the read-off way to get it. And we're at a point that we can't get stepped over any longer. So we're going to give it a good at bat again. Obviously, we've got a lot of data on the impacts of it and what we need and laid out that case. It did make it tougher, I would have to say, when all the COVID money was coming in. That made the argument harder. And we said we're trying to position this after the COVID money runs out because we were asking for this increase before COVID, which I think is an important point because they all think, well, you went out and got a bunch of stuff that you can't maintain. Is no, we had this in our budget request, but way before COVID happened. And please remind that folks when you're having discussions with them, this is basic stuff of recognizing it and giving folks a heads up. And as Mike said, and that's why I wanted to go over the TAR report, technology activity report from Munis. We can see that drop is happening. It's not theoretical. It's a reality, and it's going to keep on that downward path. So we're trying to get that addressed. So thank you, Amy. Next up, we have our cybersecurity. I call it our Captain D's report on the latest fishes in the fish tank with our great fisherman and hunter, Bob Hackworth. Bob, can you take us through the fish tank? I'll call it the Captain D's fish tank.
You bet. I've heard that Captain D's has a fish sandwich, but I've never actually seen one.
It's outstanding.
It like Moby Dick. It's just a myth. It's a mythical creature out there. So, one of my Christmas wishes has already come true. Everyone on the webcast has been talking about cybersecurity. So there's that. So I'm not really sure I can ask for more than that, to be honest with you. I've already gotten everything I wanted. When it comes to these fishes, we really are fighting human nature. Seems like getting an unrequested file is like catnip, and you just gotta like click on it or something, and that's something we really need to work with our people on, and help them understand that an unrequested file isn't sort of like a package you get in the mail. It's free and it might be something awesome. An unrequested file is really potentially very, very, very dangerous when you get it via email or some other way. And we really need to help our folks to understand that that the danger is real, and that they really need to be on the lookout for that sort of stuff. And fight that human nature to just click on it and say, hey, I didn't ask for this, but it says it's an audio transcript of something. Maybe I want to look at that. And in fact, really, they don't. It's probably nothing good in there. So anyway, I think a lot of folks know, and I think most folks got an email from your KE or from me regarding a phishing attack that we had that really started a little bit before Thanksgiving. And I really appreciate all the CIOs who are reaching out and in the middle of things right before Thanksgiving, right up until the evening right before Thanksgiving, who were helping us figure this out and get help out to other districts and either help remediate it where it had already taken hold or helped prevent it from districts where it hadn't come in yet. I can't thank you guys enough. But the interesting thing was it used a legitimate service in Dropbox. You know, that's something that a lot of folks use and are very familiar with. And it used a legitimate email from Dropbox to spread itself. And that somewhat defeats the purpose of the yellow caution banner because, you know, we tell people if you get a yellow caution banner, be careful on your email because maybe that has come from something that's fake. Well, you know, I think the caution banner, we also need to coach our folks up. A caution banner is there for a reason. It doesn't just mean that it's from a fake account. A caution banner means this whole email could have a problem with it somewhere. And so that banner is there for a reason. If you're not utilizing a caution banner in your email from folks who are sending email to you from outside of your environment or something like that, I highly encourage you to do that. I know that we have a few districts who have not implemented that caution banner yet. That's your first and biggest warning sign that there could be a problem. And so even if it doesn't always mean that there's a problem, it's an immediate visual cue for folks to say, okay, maybe I need to look just a little bit harder at this. And then as David points out, if you get an email here in KDE that's from David Couch or Bob Hackworth or Chuck Austin or the commissioner, and it's got a yellow caution banner, that means it's not us. And so that's an easy way for us to combine a couple of things with logic and help our folks understand that you know that they need to pay really close attention to that. This fish fished folks twice. You know, it fished them out of their logging credentials first, and then it fished them out of their MFA prompt second. And so there were two places where folks could have said no, but the folks who were compromised said yes. And again, like I say, that's nothing to be too embarrassed about. Anyone can be fished at any given time if they're in a hurry, if they're just not paying attention, all this stuff. And that's what that yellow banner, going back to that, kind of should help you recognize like, hey, I need to pay attention to this. You know, I shouldn't rush through this. I need to look at this. And hopefully that's something we can help our folks learn. But I do want to stress that MFA didn't fail here. You know, folks were just sort of fished around it. And so that in itself is a problem, something that we can kind of help educate folks to do a little better on. You know, once you think that you might have someone who's compromised by this, you know, changing their password certainly is a great way to go. That's something that we recommend in the spring cleaning guide. You know, we've got a whole section there on if you've got an account that's been compromised. Something else you need to do, though, is review the audit logs to see what that account did while it was compromised. And one of the things that we kind of shared through this event, and I'm going to put it in the chat, was how to kind of look at your audit logs. And there's an audit log search in Microsoft, and I'm going to paste the link in the chat here. And so we shared this out with a lot of folks who were who we knew were compromised, but this is probably good information for everybody. And certainly will be added to the spring cleaning document as a way for you to kind of help yourself through this and do it very quickly. Again, you know, people were fished, people were duped. And if they had looked very closely or even just read the email, they would have noticed that while the email came from Dropbox and it was a legitimate email, the name inside the body of the email reflected a fake email account. And so again, if you kind of looked more closely at the email itself instead of just clicking, and again, it goes back to that, you know, catnip thing. If you kind of read it, you would have seen very clearly that this came from, you know, a fake account. This wasn't real. So we don't know how many folks had actual Dropbox accounts here, I know that some people actually had Dropbox accounts and they had their Dropbox accounts compromised as well. I do want to throw out there that it's a great idea to, if you've got folks using Dropbox for legitimate district purposes, I highly encourage you to kind of try to peel that back and get them to use just Google Drive or OneDrive. Those are accounts that we have a lot more vision into, and you have a lot more authority to help change and secure or resecure than you do as a district with just a Dropbox account. And so if you've got folks and you're not sure if they're using Dropbox, then I highly encourage you to kind of look through that and really encourage your folks to just use OneDrive and Google Drive. You know, we've got contracts with Microsoft, contracts with Google. You know, we have a lot more authority to close those accounts out, to disable accounts, that sort of thing than we do with Dropbox. If you were or believe you might have been compromised, don't forget you've got a FAQ 001 form that you need to fill out. And I know we're weeks away from the event at this point. Don't worry about that. You know, we want to make sure we get those forms in if you believe you were compromised. If you had a mailbox, an entire mailbox kind of stolen and moved somewhere else, there's a good chance that unless you've gone through that entire mailbox, that there's and found no PII whatsoever, there's a good chance that that was a data breach. Doesn't mean it's a sure thing, just a real possibility. Don't hesitate to reach out to your local authorities, your police. Start off with your SRO. Go to the police. You know, let them know what's happened if you know you had an actual compromise here. You know, K-12 is also seen as part of America's critical infrastructure. Believe it or not, and I believe that we are. And at some point, we may end up having to report our data breaches to a federal agency. And there's pluses and minuses to that. One of the pluses is that once the federal agency understands the scope of K-12 data breaches, they can begin to, and this goes back to the funding question that Mike was talking about earlier, they can begin to help provide more funds for cybersecurity for K-12. So that would be a plus in that category. So I think that that's something we should kind of look out for. There's no definitive say on whether we'll end up having to report to a federal agency yet or not. But that's something that's in the works, and we'll just have to kind of see how that goes. Probably nothing will happen for sure until 2026. That's my guess. It's what I've read. And so anything can change, obviously.
Let me,
David, go ahead.
there is just a reminder, and the 14th, we'll be talking, it's just not about this, but the results of our digital readiness survey. So we're going to go over and show the graphs to the superintendents that we showed you last month. And it shows, for example, we have a pretty high percentage of districts that don't use the free service or any service that we're aware of that actually scans and does kind of a back, you know, looks through, they have any wide open doors. And so you may want to have a discussion with your superintendent beforehand if you're not doing that, to educate them on why you're doing it. The fact form, by the way, is a law to do that. There was a law passed, I can't remember if it's 2015, 2017. So that's not like an optional thing that you have to do. As Bob says with Dropbox, given that we have a Microsoft, you know, OneDrive and Google Drive, it should be close to zero folks using Dropbox. I mean, you can find a good exception for that, but it's problematic for sure in these situations, and we have a lot more issues with those than we have with others. So we did get good feedback. We're doing phishing training in KDE of staff where we send them something, see how many people bid on it. That's where we're kind of talking about the Captain D's Bob went through and very cleverly gave the different grade levels of folks with that fish, with a fish sandwich, and tragically left out the Captain D sandwich. So that's why I call it there. Didn't run that by me, but we're getting ready to do that again for KD staff. Something for you all to keep in mind. You know, I know with the Microsoft part, it's a free tool, and you will be surprised. It just helps stay on top of this phishing part. So any parting words here, Bob, before I move on to the next topic?
No, David, I think that's good.
All right, thanks.
I'll even let the Captain D's thing kind of slide.
So next up is our Office of Education Technology website. And I need everyone's help to take a look at this, all of our OET staff and our district staff and everyone, our partners, our KITS partners and other ones in the public that are looking at this. Because we're really trying to identify, have we, I call it the curator. There's a curator of both our website and a curator of our master plan. And a curator is not just one that waits for someone to say, add this. They're looking out and saying, hey, do we need to add this to something? And you have an overall curator that does that, but every individual office or content area or program area should be the curator of that stuff. And the overall curator shouldn't be catching too much. You should have processes already in place. So we've gone through a process of updating the OET website, pretty massive update of stuff that was old, out of date, didn't need to be there. And try to restructure it to the things that we think are the most critical. Obviously, it requires someone, a curator, to stay on top of it, to make sure there's a regular inspection. And if that's quarterly or that's monthly, to make sure the stuff's on there, is not out of date. They're calling it the right things. They got it listed in the right order. And so I'm asking you all to kind of help me through that process. On our main KD website, there's an education technology selection. And these are the areas. We have 3 top areas: what we want you to know, what people want most, and what we point people to the most. And then we have these areas down here, upcoming events and just some hot topics that we want folks aware of. So one of the best things that I'm just gonna start and go through these, and the part for our staff and our districts, as you look at this, are we missing anything? Because there's parts of that we took out, and someone may say it needs to be back in there. And that requires you actually taking a look at it. As one of the first people in KITS that I worked with, he said, what you get is what you regularly inspect versus expect. So there needs to require a regular inspection, or you won't be getting what you're expecting. So the first document I'd like to share with you, this is something that I provide every time we have a new commissioner, new board member. And this will require us to keep this up to date as well, because I didn't have to keep it up to date, but it's the best overview, a quick overview of the different people that we have in our organization, our top priorities that we have, and that's going to be ever changing, and how we're structured and what everybody's responsible for, and the people that are responsible for it. So obviously, as every 6 months or year, we got to take a snapshot of this. I point people now to this a lot to give a view of who we are, what we're doing.
I'll go ahead and do a quick update on EdTech contracts and implementations, because I know that was an agenda item. The internet content management that we've updated on pretty regularly is still being worked on. That is the status. I mean, it's pretty much the status as it has been, but we continue to move forward with that. We continue to feel confident we're going to end up where we want to, as far as having a path forward for how we're doing internet content management. And then some other things that are going on. The NGKI initiative, we're going to be officially closing that project out. We're intending to officially close out the project, which I know everybody says, hey, we done transition to that, we're done. Well, there's been a lot of additional work that we've been doing, and there'll be a lot of additional work that we'll continue to do, but we are officially closing out that project with ENA, Zayo for Education. I think everybody may know now that ENA, Education Networks of America, name is changing to Zayo Education, the provider of our internet, our statewide internet services. But anyways, we're officially closing that project out in January. We'll still have some continued things that we're doing as far as to implement and improve things over the moving forward, but we'll be officially closing out that project. Now, keep in mind, we've got plenty of things lined up on the runway, one of which Chuck spoke about earlier, being queues. Obviously, with internet content management, how we'll proceed forward with that. And then several other things that are continuing to go on as well.
So let's go to KD EdTech Vision and Connections.
This was the first one that you showed.
Yeah. So this is typically a connection to our strategic plan. And we're in the process now of connecting our finalizing the case strategic plan. So we'll modify this one. Just keep on scrolling down the screen so that folks who have not seen this can see it faster. You can go faster than that. And we have the big steps there with that one. So that's where that one's at. So if you can go back to the main screen. Areas that we're doing well and we want to improve on. So it'll be that one right there. Yep. Stuff. So these are the areas that we've identified. Obviously, during the course of time, we can change these, modify these, but this is where you find when everyone says, well, what's on the radar screen? Obviously, we adjust these with your feedback that you provide at the end of the year, the 360 feedback. So obviously, these are based upon the 8 wheels of future ready now, years, I should say. And so I just met with a group of folks and pointed them to this to check out where we've been, where we're going. All right, you can go back. The CAT's historic achievements timeline. You don't have to go through all this one, but this is, I point to folks who say, have you ever done it before? What do you have in place? This is something that we very frequently point people to kind of let them know the background. STLP, right there. And this is just, if you're not seeing our basic STLP site, keep on scrolling down just a little bit more and show that. And then kind of a little bit more to show the,
This is our connection to our Kentucky Academic Standards for Technology.
Yeah. Okay. Governance rules and regulations and laws, right there. Yeah. So this gives a lot of the areas which actually in CATS has law base behind it and our standards behind it. So when someone says, what are the laws you're pointing to? These are the ones that we point to. How the trust fund is established, calculation of unmet need, or need, I should say.
Mhm.
Then we get down to initial regs. This one, this top one here, 701 KR 120. As Mike was talking about, the Internet Content Management System has a lot to do with that one, but also the implementation of it. You don't have to click on it, but you see where you say implementation, you have to click on it, of 1998. Still is that was gone and I couldn't find it anywhere else. So that's an example one that we brought back. I keep on scooting down here. That's the thing what Bob was talking about, the reporting, the breach procedures started in 2006, and then there was one after that time frame. And then we hit our academic standards for computer science and technology and libraries, right? Keep on going down. Yeah. And online virtual learning. Okay, so go back. The projected cost, no, let me see that we put this one. Surveys and results.
Yep.
Right there. Yeah.
So David, what we're doing is we're pulling out and highlighting some of these main components of our CATS master plan.
So this one, probably the main one, you don't have to click on it, where it says digital survey, digital readiness report. When you click on that, that's the area that allows to see how you compare with all the other districts in different regions of the state. Also has an infographic on it, but that's the main reason we point people to this. We have the infographic pointed to in another place. Digital education technology planning. This was also asked, is there a requirement of districts do technology planning? And yes, there is. So this shows the comprehensive plan, the district plan, what's behind that, and different processes associated with that. Okay.
I'll actually make a mention of our technology planning process statewide here in a minute with another topic here.
I think the next one is CAT standards and assembling technology need. Right there, yeah. So this talks about the standards, their history. I think this has the items specifically, keep on going down, that has architectural standards that the 13 architectural design principles of anything that we do bids on. That actually goes to the art in every RFP that we point people to, or beyond that.
So product standards.
Yeah, so these are, and when you can read this up on your own screen, it gives you the details of the product standards that we have. Yeah. They can change over time as well. And our data standards, keep on kind of going down there. And this is I reference this a lot, is what are the key components and elements of having to have high quality data element essentials? And these are the 5. You don't have these 5, or a good number of them, you're probably going to have a low quality data element. We point people to that a lot. Move back. Projected costs and needs. Right there, yeah. Keep on going down.
Highlighting our four
Yeah.
Main components statewide that
Yeah.
helps build our projection.
Yeah. And this is something that we use quite a bit. If someone says, what is technology? And so this is a chart that we hand out pretty frequently for people to understand what is technology, what's considered an enterprise system. For new people here at KD coming going in districts and beyond that.
It is interesting how helpful this is. Yeah, just this
Yeah.
chart in general.
And it allows districts, if someone says what it is, I hope they can point to it and get assistance through it. Okay. And what is total cost of ownership? I actually heard our former commissioner at a meeting in Atlanta compliment us on getting him understanding what total cost of ownership was. Stephen Pruitt was giving us high five for taking that look. Back. Supporting guidance. And these are folks that we point to, or they have information for us or you on a wide variety of topics here. I talked about Kentucky stats earlier. This is how you can get to Kentucky stats, previous studies that were done, major ones. And then we've and we always add as a new study comes out. We are pretty good about adding those onto here. That's part of the curation of adding. But we also show whenever a study's done or audit's done, that a lot of this has already been done in the past. Yeah, this is a nice chart that helps superintendents and other folks of when you're buying things, when is it too early or too late to buy it? And then the next chart, if you kind of scroll down there, is to help folks of you should be going through something annually to see what is it you're buying that you're not using very much and what is it you should be getting. And this is an example of a technology product innovation through the Gartner Hype Cycle. Use that a lot through the years to help folks understand the basics. And these are folks beyond the technology folks understand the basics of this. The studies and research of K-12. This once again is recent studies, and like the data study, data quality still, is relevant. AI brief is recent. Broadband in Kentucky is recent. The annual computer science report, we would need the 2024 in this spot here.
Yep.
Data security and best practices. I think that's what we were talking about before, 2015. 2020, we referenced that a ton during COVID, did we not? And still afterward, and the guidelines.
Mm-hmm.
As you're kind of going down through this, the IT assessments, the impact surveys over a long period of time. Yep, so when the Auditor of Public Accounts or OEA does a study, they've had people coming and going, we remind them that study was probably done already. Yep.
And then we touch on these
External studies again, yeah. So as Chuck Austin would state, we're the studiedest program in history.
Most researched and studied.
Yeah. So we can go back. And the Kentucky K-12 Education Technology Award, this right now is the Stillwell Award and the history of that. I know Kisti has their award winners in the spot. This is the one where we have the Stillwell Award winners. And so you can just go back, including most of the recent ones that we awarded. What people want most, in fact, the top call from the Department of Education is transcripts. And that's for 30 straight years. And so we point them to the different areas they can get, transcripts. Online virtual learning remote page, that's been a hot item for quite some time. CAT standards and purchasing, I think these have the link of actually the things that you buy. They have the standard and actually a link to the contract that you are required to buy it from. And then digital, let's go education technology funding. This is an area, and I talked to Lee, you remember this morning, we need to add Appendix H on the CAT's budget as one of the line items here. Because CAT's budget goes through the annual expectation of costs and the 5 to 6 year annual expectation. We need to, I noticed that last night. E-rate. Area for E-rate here. You don't have to click on it, but the place where it says internal to KDE and district customers, there's only 3 links that I could find. Maybe there's another one that has where you click on it and you got to log into it. The Infinite Campus Parent Student Portal is one of those. The digital driver's license is another one. You have to have a login account, and this one here too. So just not anyone in the public can log into that. But nearly everything else that we have on here, the public can get to it. Digital learning.
Just a general representation of some of our digital learning programming. Quick note, we will be updating our digital learning guidelines. It's time to do that, and we're excited to share that here in January.
Okay. This is where we have the Munis background. You click on Munis. And lots of details behind the Munis system for those that are in that particular part. And Infinite Campus as well.
Lots of information and details.
Yeah, so there's parts of the left-hand side for that. They can help you out. Now, what we point you to the most, or people to the most, is our master plan. And that would be the very front where the table of contents is there. If you scroll down that one.
Yep.
Yeah, you can see the table of contents of it. So you can go back. The infographic,
Which we've already.
we do, but it's a little bit different point here. We point them mainly to this information down here. Yeah. Okay, back. And that's what we're going to update this one in February, right, Marty?
February 1st.
Okay. The media portal goes straight to the technology portion, so you don't have to go to the media portal in general. And obviously, we'll have the December one here. And with each one of those, we have written notes. So you don't have to click on it, but if you were to click on September, you would see that the actual video, but you also see the written summary. And we're now doing those with the aid of artificial intelligence in Teams. Open house, we do point a lot of folks wanting data to this tool. Where they can just go get the raw data in spreadsheets. The service desk for districts and for KD agency staff. The contracts. All the contracts that we have. Some are state level, some are just the K-12 level. Okay. School report card suite. This has 3 components. The school report card is just not the charts and graphs. There's 2 other components. It's the campus portal for students and parents, and even then the staff and districts can get to that, can get to the Infinite Campus data themselves. That's by far the most used data that we have. And then the data sets are open house to the right. And then the dashboard is what Dee Dee was talking about that she showed that will hopefully be available today or tomorrow, for sure sometime this week. Now you go to vendor opportunities, and a lot of our vendors are interested in this. So, you know, where is the place where they can find out about the bids? You know, I tell them, you know, watch our webcast because we talk about bids upcoming. They can come here. Keep on scrolling down. And this is a new ad, is the common response to EdTech vendors is this helps you, and I use this 10 to 15 times a week from all the EdTech vendors that want to meet with me. And so what this does, it educates them in a good way about that doesn't really do you any good to waste your time and our time doing this. This is the way that you can get on a CAT state contract. This is the method, and there's not a shortcut. But I'm now just linking people to that versus sending it in an email. You go back. So this helps our vendors, or you can help get the vendors that approach you, because I get a lot up here to where they say they talk to the district and they're coming up here. So then I'm pointing to this information. CAT's data request, Kentucky Education Technology System data request. We got a lot of requests from outside of districts, sometimes districts, and this is the process you go through. This is the governance that we use within our organization. We have one of the best data governances in the United States. That would put us definitely in the top 10, or top 5, I would say, top 5. is staying on top of this. And it's a lot to corral all the different data coming in and out of here. Go back. Database best practices. This is Bob Packworth's favorite page. And this talks about what you do in a breach, how do you prevent a breach, what the steps you take. Digital citizenship, this is one to where give some background to folks, because I always say, you give any guidance to students and parents, administrators about the proper use of technology when immersed in technology. Definitely a hot topic item for the upcoming session with smartphones. I think you're definitely going to see some legislation restricting smartphones in the classroom during classroom time. Except use policies, these things have been around. Code of conducts have been around districts for quite some time. We now call this responsible use policy. So maybe need to update this one to responsible use.
We will be. Yep.
Yeah. And then the leases, the people don't pay attention to this until they're doing it. And here's the simple way: you click on a form, which is now required by law if you're going to do a lease, and if you have an E-rate shot clock on it, it's important that you get it here, in a very short period of time, way ahead of time, so they have enough time to go through our legal office. We spend less than 5 or 10 seconds reviewing them at OET. This is mainly a legal thing, if you've heard me talk about in the past. If you can scroll down now. These are the hot topics that we'll be adding. This is where our curator will stay on top of. The IT Academy report really should be called the Computer Science Report. IT guidance, so we'll be updating that. You get the upcoming dates of our December event. So obviously when we get done with today, that one needs to be removed by our curator, and then we focus on the other months that are coming up. And for all these, if you see something's missing, or even the order of them, if you kind of scroll back up to the top, each transcript's going to be number one, but that's by far the number one. And we try to look at the data that people are actually coming to our website and looking at things. And so, but it doesn't say that this has to be the order, or even what we call them. If there's something more customer friendly, to call them. So for example, instead of calling this thing Secure Web Gateway, it's Internet Content Management System. That makes more sense to the average person than Secure Web Gateway. So we've gone through, I noticed there was another place in here we still had that wording that I've identified with Lee.
And David, I think what's cool about this is we've taken efforts to clean up. We've definitely gotten rid of kind of stale content that was out there, and having fresh content that's clean and easy to get to is super important. And so categorizing it in ways, and so any feedback that you can give us would be very helpful.
This is from our OET staff, and I would say this: it's not too late to speak now for your piece, but it's getting late. So if there's something on there that you don't see that you have pointed people to in the past that we need to keep, let us know. And, for example, the older master plans no longer show up on here, but we've kept those in kind of an archive place. The 92 to 98 plan and all the other ones we've had in here before. Yeah, so you can leave that now. Okay. We can stop sharing.
I did.
Okay, thanks. So just let us know. Appreciate it for the staff. It is live now. I told you last time we met. It was in draft form. Now it's live, but it's always going to be changing, as is the master plan document itself. There's portions of that need to be updated. We'll go through the curation process of keeping it up to date. Marty, I thought, can we do one of the poll questions here about the favorite Christmas story?
Now this is extremely important.
It is.
This poll question is extremely important. So we'll go ahead and launch this now. And we do have some, internal kind of challenges here that have been put on the table. So this poll's live now, so please participate. Please jump in, and I think this is very important. And if you're an other on this, that's great too.
Obviously, I didn't get to screen this.
Oh, you did? I thought you.
I did not get.
You didn't. I thought this was your idea. I'm gonna go. We'll go with that.
Let's go with that.
Let's go participate. So as these results are coming in live, wow, we have a clear leader right now.
No, it's not. You got Die Hard's up there. Good Die Hard. Is Die Hard a Christmas movie?
Wow. If anyone else would like to comment on David's question right there.
I'm just asking. Okay.
We can only consider Die Hard a Christmas movie if we're also willing to consider Lethal Weapon, the original Lethal Weapon, which opens with a Christmas song. Yeah.
Oh, that's good stuff.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
as predicted.
Hmm.
As predicted. I'm not sure who this 5% are, but that you're awesome. Whoever this 5%.
How about the original Grinch? How'd that not make the list of choices?
That's a good question. That could be another. That could be another. We're expecting all the others to show up in the chat.
I bet most of those are the Grinch.
You think so?
I'm surprised Captain D's isn't a choice on there.
We can do that. We can add that one. Marty, can you give an update on the Speak Up?
Absolutely. So we shared last month that, part of, and it's actually perfect, David, that you went through the resources on the OET website, the new modernized OET website with all the content, because we touched on the technology plan, we touched on the surveys and results. So part of our digital readiness work and digital equity work, which is also tied into EdTech plans, is that student voice component. We really want to hear what students and teachers are getting to do with the technologies that we put in front of them. It's why we come to work every day. It's why we think about education technology 24/7. And so part of that for us is a statewide effort. Traditionally, historically, we had worked with a company called Bright Bytes to get that student voice in. Google purchased Bright Bytes, and so we've had a transition. And this year, we are working strategically with Project Tomorrow. And really excited about that work. They have a body of work that is over a decade strong called Speak Up. And so we reached out to districts statewide to get a cohort of districts. We really have traditionally targeted, 16, 18 to 20 districts. We had 26 to 28 districts who responded that they would like to be in that cohort. And that Speak Up window is open now. We right now have 10 districts who have already started the work, and another 16 districts who are planning to start that work. That window is open now through January 24th. We were able to work with Project Tomorrow and their leadership team to customize and Kentuckyize several of those questions that really fit in with what we ask and what we like to ask. And so we've Kentuckyized some of those questions. And so we're really excited about that work. It's going to be very helpful. It definitely fits in with all of our education technology planning. It fits into our master plan work and strategically ties into our additional budget requests.
Yep. And we'll update the infographic with that
That's right.
information on it. And definitely those give a good indication that we're good stewards of taxpayer funds, and this is how it's being used and who's valuing it.
That's right.
I appreciate I think we're close to just less than a handful of people that haven't turned in their annual top 5 feedback. I really appreciate that from all of our staff and all of our districts, and we'll be getting it from each one of the KD areas. That gives us great insight. It gives me personally great insight from your perspective of how things are going, and then collectively themes, but even there's some unique things that I find that folks identify that are very helpful. And I always will tell folks is, I'll get 1 or 2 people every year going, why can't you make this anonymous? And there's a skill in life to be able to be critical, but also showing respect and being constructive. I think it's a life skill. When you see these pure anonymous sites, they're just toxic. And that's why a good number of folks are just eliminating them, because they're just poisonous, the stuff that's on there. So, and folks will say, well, I'm fearing retribution. And I would say, show me 1 time in 2 decades of retribution. And any good leader or leaders want to get feedback on how things are going. Both, there's not the stuff well, but the stuff we can improve on. You're not a good leader if you can't take that. But once again, as a staff member or as a fellow leader or fellow district, you can do it in a constructive way. And 99% of the things we get back are done in a constructive way. And when we see someone try to go the poison approach, we'll say, we need to work on your life skills. You can still be critical about that, but you can be it in another way. And there's no retribution to it. So I don't really have much stomach when people say I can't really say my thing because I can't be an anonymous. But I appreciate the feedback so far. Some X number of you have already received some feedback directly for me, thanking you. And then there's one of the points that you make that I wanted to get with you and just kind of talk you through it, learn a little bit more about it, or educate you a little bit more about it. But thanks on that. I also sent you part of this meeting, the update that I got when I attended the Southern Region Education Board in Atlanta. Those results are going to our Kentucky legislature, who's very interested in AI, particularly that PowerPoint slide that I sent to you. Those are the 6 recommendations that they're making to our Kentucky legislature. The other parts about AI in the workforce and AI in the classroom, I have shared that with other folks. Those aren't finalized yet, and they're still getting feedback from districts. I believe Mike has already given you an update on the internet content management when we're going through trying to do this transition. For all of our team, all of our district, anything else that we need to talk about before we take a well-deserved Christmas break? Well, I want to thank everyone for the great effort this past year. You, as I always will say when I read that feedback, you don't get a feeling for the massive things that we've done and done well. And I say we's our OET staff and districts working together along with our vendor partners, just historic and wonderful types of things for students and teachers. And we still, through this feedback, it helps us really modify to stay relevant on what the future is. So I appreciate everyone's effort with this and effort over the past year. I do hope everyone's taking some time off. I definitely will, and we'll see you back in 2025. So thanks again.